I think it's my computer. I'm going to log out and start over, guys.
Or not log off, but now hit record.
And we're live and recording.
Okay, I think we're,
Fine.
we'll try it out and see how we are.
Okay, we'll call the meeting, workshop meeting for Monday, February 22nd, 2021 to order at 6:07. Sorry for the delayed start. We had some technical difficulties with our equipment. Would you like to do a roll call?
Sure. Counselor Richter is
She's here.
here.
She's here. She's muted.
Okay, can I get a name?
I'm here.
There we go.
Up, log down, he's coming back. Counselor Hawkins?
Here.
Counselor,
Here.
Counselor McMillan?
Here.
Here. And Miss Ginton is gonna be late. And John, are you there?
Yes.
Yep, we got you now. Okay. So we have everybody but Miss Ginton.
Okay. Miss Denton, when she arrived, she had to stay at work a little late. We'll be swearing her in, so that'll be in addition to our agenda. First up is an ordinance review. This is in response to a letter that was communicated to the city from Mr. Bertrand and requested that the ordinances that he put out draw our attention, we could talk about them. Make sure everybody understood them. Did everybody have a chance to read them
Yes.
and understand them? Okay.
So I just want to say, for some reason, the copy machine cut some of those off, but I think the ones that pertain to what the biggest problem was coming up was under 30.32, which kind of refers back to 30.30, the 30.30 you did not have. It got cut off. And then also 30.33 is the other order of deliberations, and then 30.34 rules and conduct of quorum, I think, were the biggest issues that were brought forward. My thought was, according to, I just thought we could go over all of 30.25 through 30.35, and you don't have a couple of those for some reason they're cut off, so I was just going to let you know 30.25 is the regular city council meeting, and basically that one says that the union shall be on the second Monday of each month, unless it's on a holiday, and then it's the next day, or held when
Next Monday.
or the next Monday, sorry, and they may change the regular meeting date as it deems necessary. And then we have to establish where it's at. Special council meetings is 30.26. Special council meetings of the council may be called by the mayor or the council with a 24-hour notice. Special meetings may also be called upon the request of 3 or more members of the council with 24 hours notice. And special meetings of the council may also be held by the common consent of the membership. So if we're up here and we're deliberating and we think we need to have another special meeting, the council can do that. If I have 3 counselors, they call me and say they want to have a meeting on a special day, by that, we have to call that. As long as we meet those 24-hour notice requirements that are.
Yeah, I do notice though that it says 24-hour previous written notice.
To each
So
member,
is a
yes.
written notice, is that on our computer, is that considered written?
I would say if I got it to you in email, that's written.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
It doesn't say I have to mail it to you, it just says written
Written
notice.
note. Okay, so an email would be the same as long as it's in writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It also talks about executive sessions, when they be held during, regular special meetings, as long as appropriate statutory limitations are met. On 30.28, it talks about the agenda. Says the administrator will prepare the agenda of the business to be presented at regular council meeting. Council will consider the meeting at the meeting only matters that appear on the agenda for that meeting, or the items or as introduced by a council member or the mayor. Council members, the mayor shall endeavor to have subjects they wish considered, submitted in time to be placed on the agenda. Basically, it says it gives me the authority to make the agenda. I usually sit down with the mayor to make that in conjunction with what we're doing. And then if you guys feel there's something you want on the agenda, you need to make that request to me and the mayor to put that on the agenda.
Just for new members who haven't done this before, if you want something on the agenda and you can't get hold of Doug or the mayor, I have just written it down and given it to the ladies in the office and they will get it to them. Add that to the agenda.
Sure. And everybody should have my cell phone number by now. Maybe Miss Dick doesn't have it yet, but you can always call me and I answer my phone or leave a message or text.
I just mentioned one word of caution that we don't, that the council don't get themselves into trouble by communicating amongst themselves and getting, essentially a quorum to ask for something. I can, because that's against state law. So you got to be careful of that. And I can honestly say that anybody that's really wanted anything on the agenda gets it into Doug and I get it together and put it on. And somewhat, I'll take the oldest for some of this because I was going by Oregon state law on the agenda. I was going by what I thought I was reading in the charter and also recommendations at LOC. And I flipped the things around on the agenda in an order for an expediency so that people didn't have to sit through an entire meeting with reports. So we talked about the ordinances and resolutions first and then went into the regular business. And I did that after we came back from an LOC meeting. I think it was the first one I went to. I honestly didn't get much assistance. When I took this role on as mayor, I requested it and didn't get any. And I pieced together, to the best of my knowledge, also from the previous council sessions that I've attended. And
And also at that time, when you were revamping the order of everything, the council had talked about the fact that according to this, the only time there's public comment, as far as just looking at 30.20, is at the beginning of the meeting. And we had talked about that not really being the best, because then the meeting goes on and then the public doesn't have a chance to speak at the end of the meeting. And so the council asked for a second public comment to be added at the end of the meeting. So that was
and
another.
that's how we arrived at the two.
At the two, yes.
So I just wanted to go on 30.29 so that we don't get too far ahead. Just going to go through them one at a time to discuss. And on 30.29, the consent calendar, the only thing I can see when I read this is basically all of our normal business that just passes through, that doesn't need any discussion, like our minutes, our reports, those things all go through consent, which means you're just voting to approve them all. And technically, one thing we have not been doing here, which we probably need to make a correction on, is we've just been doing it by motion in a second. But according to here, the consent calendar is only adopted on a affirmative vote of the council. So we do need to call a vote after that motion in second on the consent agenda. And because it is a voting matter, not just a motion in the second. That's the only thing I can see that we did wrong in the 30.29. That, I mean, not a big issue. The other thing that it also says is if a counselor has a problem with something that's in the consent agenda that they wish to discuss further, it can be pulled out by a vote of the council to pull something out of the agenda to push it under discussion under new or old business. So let's say in the consent agenda, there's, I don't know, something, I was just looking at here. Let's say in the expenditures, there's a question about the expenditures. We can vote to pull those expenditures out, vote on the rest of the consent agenda, and then that expenditures portion will actually be voted on at a later time under new business. It would give, or separately, or to have that discussion just about that thing. So that's how the consent agenda works. The order of the regular meeting, we follow this pretty good. If you look at the order of roll call, hearings, and appointments, well, we don't have very many hearings and appointments. So then we go into public comments and communications. We go to old business, new business, consent agenda, report of officer committees, and then suggestions for future agendas, and then adjournment. The only thing we've added, as you guys have discussed, is another right after, right before adjournment, you have added and public comment section. Actually, it's before the suggestion of future agendas. You have added another public comment section. That's above and beyond what this called for. Business special meetings, at the special meeting council only. The only thing that can be talked about at a special meeting is what's advertised that's going to be discussed at those special meetings. And it should have a provision for public comment in there. So I don't know that we've always advertised public comment at a special meeting, but we have allowed it. I think whenever we're voting on something, we generally allow public comment at some point in there. But we just to make sure it's on that agenda for a public comment period. Okay, this is where 30.32, altering the order of the agenda. The council can alter the order of the agenda. Or with the consent of the council, the mayor may alter it. If you look at it, we have altered the agenda, and this was something the mayor did prior to me coming here, was with the past administration. And to my knowledge, that was approved by the council at that time, and it has never changed back since this mayor has been there. At any time that the council wishes to move back to what we have, they can obviously make that motion to do so. That's what I'll say about that. Order deliberations. This is where our interpretation, I think, possibly got messed up. We were so focused on what our agenda said. There's a public comments here, they're having public comments here, but we did not add in 3033 that anytime we have something coming that is going to be voted on by the council, where action is going to be taken, there needs to be a public comment period. So if we make a motion to, I'll use the last meeting for example. If we made a motion to accept a certain billing for ambulance billing, before the vote, you can have, and according to this, before you guys even discuss it, you need to ask out here, once the motion's on the floor, you need to ask out here if there's anybody that wishes to talk for or against, let them speak. Then staff would give its report, which I think is backwards. I think staff should give it first, but I guess we will do it what they say here. So they get to ask their questions or and their comments, then the staff goes, and then you go. So, and then you guys can make a decision from there. I think this is messed up. I think the staff should give their report first, then the public be able to say what they think and give, ask questions, and then the council can have their discussion. But I think this is written backwards and we'll follow it because that's what we're being asked to do. I think we're going to end up with more complaints because a lot of times the public doesn't develop a comment till after the staff has given its report, so that everybody knows what it's about. But this is what it reads, that's what we'll do. Decorum, this got brought up over, I think, the meeting with Mr. Bertrand, the first meeting we had where we gave him 20 minutes, to come up and talk about stuff
During a workshop.
during the work session. The mayor, he shall preserve decorum. That is his job, and that's what he'll do. The councilors shall preserve order and decorum at a council meeting. And basically it just says that conduct, they cannot impugn the motives of any speaker and not engage in personal attacks. Or question issues that are in under discussion between the public. Basically, it says you just need to sit there and be a sounding board. That's what it says. It says staff and public gotta do the same thing. And then it talks about how to remove people and the enforcement of decorum, how that works. So, and then 3035 ordinance procedure just basically sets out that you have to follow chapter 8 of the charter when passing all ordinances brought before it. And basically chapter 8 says that all ordinance coming before it have to have 2 readings. It tells that, you're not gonna have a section of you must be ordained by, and, or this, the city of Union ordains, and then what the ordinance is, and then it's passed, and then it says there's a 30-day moratorium on all ordinance passed, unless the council puts a specific date they want it to start, or if they declare it an emergency action, which it needs to start right away. So that's what chapter 8 of our charter says. And so those were what were brought up. I come to you with what I feel that we need to work on. I think really the 2 items. One, allowing public comment before we vote, and 2, on consent agenda, we need to take a vote on consent agenda. So other than that, the agenda that has been changed, that was approved by council, so there's no reason to address that issue because council agrees on the agenda that's been placed before them. Other than that, that's all I have in regards to the report of this and the review of that section of the ordinance.
Do you have any questions or comments?
Well, no, not really. No, I'll just leave it.
Okay. Do you have anything, John?
No, it seems pretty clear. I can see where Mr. Wiggins made the point about possible order of material appearance to us. I agree with him. I think that the staff should be able to make their reports prior to anything. That way the public both is aware of what's going on and we have a little information. But other than that, I understand it's pretty straightforward and I don't really have anything else to say about it, sir.
What about you, Tara?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think I appreciate the information.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting and like Doug said, that we might have more complaints. Hopefully, if there are more complaints about people not knowing before the staff reports, that they will become more participant and help us and come with ideas to change it if they so desire.
Yeah, that's right. The only thing I can say,
Leslie, you got Leslie here.
oh, Leslie, I forgot you. Sorry.
Oh, I'm good. Nothing to say.
Okay. The only thing I can say is, council has the authority to review an ordinance and completely drop it and or change it by going through the procedures. And I think Doug really put out a good point on the on the one matter. And so I think I'd kind of like the council to take a look at that. I can't do it myself. It takes a council person.
Yeah,
So that
I would like
we're-
to see that 30.33 order of deliberations looked at and revamped maybe.
And then we get into the whole thing of public speaking and questions and everything else. And just so everybody understands, when you're trying to direct a meeting, you make an exception one time to what you're doing. And then you have to make that exception every meeting following. And for example, during workshop sessions, because I know I used to sit out in the audience, I get frustrated because I thought I had something pertinent to say and want to say, and the mayor at the time didn't allow me to talk. Didn't allow me to ask a question, make any comment. I didn't understand that. That kind of derived from the training that I've received from LOC. And so, you know, in trying to get the job done, be open, you know, what advice you gonna follow? And in no way it's any intent to cut down on public comment. It just has to do with, this is an information gathering thing. And an opportunity for discussions about any subject that the council wants to talk about, but no decisions can be made. I've said numerous times, open to talking with anybody, and I know the council feels the same way. But we can't just open things up and because we don't know where it's gonna go. Then I don't want to be put in a position where I have to slam the gavel down on decorum issues, on one word of language, or somebody takes offense because somebody said something that they shouldn't have. That, to me, inhibits the flow of discussion amongst the counselors. That's my take on it. Mr. Wiggins?
I just wanted to bring up too, I have been in talking with, because it was brought up that the work session is not a recognized meeting or in our ordinances. Well, our ordinances recognize business meetings, special meetings, and executive orders or executive sessions, sorry. And they recognize them in that they put guidance on how to run those. The state of Oregon does recognize work sessions. Our ordinance is silent on work sessions and the way that they should run. So when our ordinance is silent on the way something is to run, you fall to state statute. According to state statute, in work sessions, you do not have to allow public comment because you are not deliberating towards a decision. You're having a free flow conversation of information gathering, but it is not to deliberate towards a decision. It's just to gather information. If it does become a portion in which you start deliberating towards a decision, then you have an illegal meeting because then it's because you're trying to sway somebody or another. You have to be really careful about your verbiage in a workshop. And I'm speaking to you as from our attorney, guidance she gave in this. And she said, you gotta be careful. You can't say, well, I'm gonna vote for this measure because of blah, 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 because then you're telling everybody how you're gonna vote and you're trying to persuade them. The idea is to ask questions of things you don't understand, or to try to answer questions from people that don't understand, or, say, well, when I look at this and I look at this, what is the difference between those two? That's information gathering. But you gotta be really clear. You can't say, well, I really like this one, or I'm gonna go this way, because then that could have influence towards somebody who's still making their decision.
So
That's the caution you get on a workshop.
So do we have a list of what the state says a work work session is.
I can
Like we have a statement here that says what a meeting is and what a,
Sure,
but what is a work session?
right, and I can get that, Paige was working on getting all that stuff put together for us. So basically, a work session is, as she described it to me, it's a free flow of thoughts between counselors. And because you have a quorum present, it has to be public. Even though you're not, it's basically, it's an executive meeting that the public can come to. So you're having an executive discussion amongst yourselves with the public able to watch, rather than an executive session that is secret back behind closed doors that, you know what I'm saying? This is like an open executive session.
I'll use the water study as one. You could do that in executive session. Review a water, call it in, and that's the subject you're gonna talk is water rates and sewer rates. And you're gonna discuss that in an executive session. I personally feel that that's information that the public should have. And so instead of calling an executive session and then do it in the back room, we do it out in public. So everybody is aware of what the city is looking at and the reasons behind it.
And the reason it's open to the public is so the public then can get the same information you're getting. And then they can work on developing their information, so when they do come to the business meeting, they have pertinent things that they could say to the council to reflect on those issues. Plus, they'll hear what you guys have to say, and they might come up with some things to refute what they heard in the meetings, or they might hear some things to support what you heard in the meetings. And that's why they're open, is so people can listen to your discussion, they can do their research that they need to do to come back and support or defend their position during that public portion before you vote, which I think is the important part, that when you go into a regular meeting or a special meeting, you have that, when you're on that topic, you give them the chance to talk so that they can, or ask questions of staff or those types of things so that they can.
So there is no public comment at a work session.
There can be, but if the mayor opens up public comment at the work session, he's got to open it up across the board. So just because, and I'll just use an instance because Dick is here, but if we're talking about water rates and Dick has something to say about water rates, and the mayor kind of knows what he wants to say and lets Dick say it, that's fine. But then everybody else in the thing is open up to come up and speak about water rates.
Or anyone on the Zoom meeting or anything else.
Okay.
So,
It's not just.
but it's to that subject. If he allows public comment on that subject, like if he let Dick step up now to talk about this, then everybody else in the public would be able to talk about this.
Okay.
He can't just say, well, I just want to only hear what Dick has to say, or I only want to hear what Mr. Bertrand
But
has
if
to
he
say.
opens it up in one work session, does that mean the next time we have a work session, that he has to open it up to the public and
Not
in the
necessarily,
next work session?
unless he makes it a habit to do it a lot, then there can be the argument. I mean, you're gonna have to form that special circumstance, and I give it, for example, when we had the water rates guy here, you have a specialist here talking about water rates. Somebody who's not gonna be here all the time to answer questions. It might behoove the mayor at that time then to open it up questions from the city or from city residents to ask that guy the questions, because he's gonna have the answers. He studied it, he's the one that's formed the report, he's got the better answer than staff does. So you do it maybe in a special circumstance when you're doing something like that, or if AP's in here talking about Anderson Perry's in here talking about a project, and maybe you allow the public to ask those questions at that time. But if it's general run-of-the-mill stuff, I mean, you gotta be careful. If you open it up for everything, then yes, you gotta open it up for everything.
So would it be best then if you were at a work session that you said we normally don't have public comment, but today we have so-and-so and so-and-so who is going to speak, and so we will go ahead and allow public
I
comment?
think
To say it's an exception rather than
the key-
setting a precedent.
exactly is to justify the exception of allowing public comment.
Okay,
So we're allowing public comment because we have a specialist here today that can answer these questions better than we can.
okay.
Or, you know, whatever the needy, or we really want the public input on this matter right now.
And the truth of the matter is I am a conservative when it comes onto that. And I kind of take to heart that, you know, lawyers that advise on how to do these things. And honestly, I went by the recommendation of the lawyers with CIS and League of Oregon Cities. And I'll follow their advice and my city administrator's advice before I'll take it from somebody else. Because if I do that, then I have legal protection. If I do something on a you know, advice of somebody other than that, then I've opened up the city and myself. I hate it that it's that way, but I don't make the rules.
So unless we have an ordinance that dictates in a work session that we have to have public comment, we are fine via state statute. It doesn't mean you can't have a meeting. Basically, a goal setting session, which they've had every year, those are work sessions, guys. And they're legal to have. So it's the same thing. And it doesn't fall under special meeting. It doesn't fall under business meeting. And it is definitely not an executive session per se. So, but it is an open public meeting, so the public can know that you're not meeting behind closed doors to discuss matters. As we know has happened in Union in the past, from what I understand, so that the public can see you guys are meeting together to talk about things in front of the public. And that's what you have to do, as long as you're not deliberating to a decision.
I believe the executive sessions has been held since I've been mayor, I can count on one hand. And they all had to deal with personnel issues. And, you know, we haven't had any in, how long have you been here, Doug?
I only know of 3 that I've been in, since I've been here in 3 years.
Mayor, may I speak? This is Leslie.
Okay, go ahead, Leslie.
Just a thought. I know sometimes people in the audience that are watching and listening to our workshops, sometimes they have some good information that might help. So is there a possibility, something to think about, maybe limiting, like at a regular council meeting, like a 3-minute, you know, section for the audience to speak if they choose?
That's why, Leslie, that's why it was prior to you coming on the council that when we made the agenda, we put in the 3 minutes at the end of all the council meetings where somebody could talk about any subject pertaining to the city that they wanted.
She was meaning the work session.
What's that?
She was
Oh, in the
meaning
work,
in the work
are you talking
session.
about just work sessions?
Yes. I know that Mr. Middleton has gave out some good information on occasion.
All the time? On that is, if the mayor opens up public comment in general all the time, you gotta do it all the time. And that's up to you guys on how long and how you guys wanna run. I can't tell you how you wanna run your meeting. But those are what you guys gotta decide. I'm just giving you the best, or what state law allows and what the interpretation from our attorney says it allows. So that's what I give to you. You guys can do more than what it says. You just can't limit more. Does that make sense?
Wouldn't you, if you wanted to do something different than what the state dictates in their rules, wouldn't we want to have an ordinance that addressed it?
that would be another option, is to form an ordinance, so further councils down the road have to follow, an order of deliberations during a work session, so. If you want to do something that's above and beyond what state law says you have to do.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Before I got on the city council, I was bringing stuff, and during the work sessions, I would have some questions or comments I want to make, and I would email the city afterwards to let them know, hey,
That's right.
I found this out from this person on this date. Can you pass this on? And I don't know.
Like I said, it depends, it could be dependent on the topic too. You can have a hot topic like here. And you can solicit in the comments because it is one of those hotter topics. But it could be something like we're discussing now that is just trying to, for our thing, get a better feel of what the ordinance says we should or shouldn't do, and it's up to you whether you want that public comment.
And I basically learned something. I had never looked at an ordinance for how to run a meeting. Honestly, to me, an ordinance was for four-wheeler riding in town and weed growth and fences. It didn't.
Not the bottom table.
Yeah, it wasn't how, to me, it was laid out in Oregon state law, okay, you do this. When I ask how you run a meeting, here's Robert's Rules of Order. That's how you run the meeting. I didn't ever have anybody say that you read the ordinances to find out how to run a meeting. Never have, and up until a few weeks ago, honestly.
Anyway, and the other thing I would say to you guys, and I think it's been brought to our attention that they've been wanted violations against council for the mayor for not following. And because of the way this ordinance was written, it's unenforceable because they put no clause for penalty clauses in it. So therefore, the ordinance is guidance. It's not even it's not like a true ordinance, because a true ordinance has penalties, and there is no penalties in this section for if someone violates. And that was determined by the municipal judge when he read through. He was like, well, okay, even if they violated, there's no punishment because there's no penalty in here to assess. It did not list it. So when these ordinances were written, they were written with no penalty with them. So yes, they're guidance. They are enforceable through a civil matter, which somebody would have to hire an attorney and go to civil court and prove damages to them in order to on our ordinances. So
Well, something that when I look at these, honestly, if we just took this and just ripped this out and got rid of it, we still would have the same guidance from the state of Oregon tells us how to do this. So these are, I mean, yes, they are ordinances, but how important are they? Well, we would be able to function just fine without them. And they might even be exactly the same as what the state says. I haven't sat down and compared them. But
The only-
we couldn't function without them.
Yeah, the only portion that we haven't got the guidance on is our ordinance that says 30.33, the order of deliberation. That when we bring up something, first we have to ask for proponents and then opponents.
Yeah.
And then the staff give their report.
But that
And
could
then
be
we
the-
deliberate.
That could be the same in the state ordinance, in the state rules. I don't know. It may be exactly the same thing. This might just be a.
I can tell you when I talked to our city attorney and she read over this, she was kind of flabbergasted that we would have ordinances telling us how to set up an agenda. She said, if you're gonna do something like that, your ordinance should basically read that the mayor sets the agenda, and it must include these items, but not, it doesn't like, it must have, you know, a public speaking area, or a public comment period, it must have this, it must have that, but it doesn't give the exact order it must be in. She says she's all for saying, you know, there's gotta be something that says, you know, there's a hearings area, a public comments area, an old and new business, a consent agenda, that stuff's in there. But it doesn't have to be a specific order as yours sets out. And she goes, she wasn't around when they said that and understanding why they probably did it. And I'm sure somebody from back in the past can tell you why that happened that way, but I don't know. So that's all I have about the ordinance review, and I think that's been good that we actually reviewed this, and I think there's a couple things going forward we can help ourselves to fix.
Yes. Well, it's nice to look at them and also see why we do what we do, because just like we said in 30.33, if we ask ourselves why we do what we do, reading that, we go, oh, that doesn't really, you know, or you might read it and say, well, yeah, that sounds really good, or no, we need to switch it back to whatever. So it's good to look at it and see what's there.
Anyway, I learned something.
So, I mean, I'll make those adjustments moving forward, and hopefully we remember them as we move forward. It might take the team to figure that out moving forward, because we've done things the one way so much that we just gotta remember to remind you, oh, hey, we need to make public comment.
Well, and on the 30.33, that I can see why that one would be difficult, because a lot of the times we have meetings and there's no one here but us. And
Sure.
so it's easy to forget that we have to ask audience to, you know. But we do, and especially now that we're online, we have more, there's more access for people to make a comment and say they want to make a comment.
Sure.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to the goal setting.
Actually, do you want to swear in Ms. Denton so she
Oh.
can start participating with us?
All I can see is a hat. Come on,
I
Heidi.
just want you to
I said the
get
same
it.
thing
You wanna
about it.
step up there, yeah, just stand here. Good. No problem. I'll have you raise your right hand.
You want to turn around to the camera so that you can, the camera can.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Hi, Heidi.
All right, state your name.
I, Heidi Denton,
You affirm that I will support,
do affirm that I will support,
obey, and defend the Constitution
obey, and defend the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and the Charter and ordinances for the City of Union.
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Union.
I affirm that I will discharge the duties of my office
I affirm that I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity and to the best of my ability.
with fidelity and to the best of my ability.
Welcome to council.
Thank you.
Now you can take your chair up there.
Come on up, Heidi. Goal setting discussion. My thoughts were the following. We've gotten a couple of people that turned in what they would like to work on. I have a couple that I know who I want on. And if you want on a committee other, or want to volunteer for a committee that other than what you've been on, will you please let Doug know?
I've only received bids, or the bids for committees from Leslie and from Councilor McMillan and Councilor Cox.
Yeah.
So if there's a committee you wish to be on, that you absolutely want to be on,
Put
please
it-
let me know and put it as your number one star, 69, whatever you want to do. But otherwise, the mayor will just start assigning them, and that's where you end up. So if there's something you're passionate about on this list, please write it down that you really want to be involved with that one over anything else, you know, so you at least found something you really like to do. And if you could please email them to me by the next meeting, actually before a week before the next meeting, then I can get them in the packets and people kind of have an idea. And then when we bring it up at the meeting, if you want to do some changing and jockeying, that'll be the time to do it.
I always suggest doing it while it's fresh in your mind tomorrow. If you set the goal to do it tomorrow or the next day, instead of thinking, well, I got 2 weeks, because that's.
This is Tara. Can we just do one? Because that's really all I have time for. And it's the one that I'm already doing with Shri.
You're talking economic development.
Yes.
We kind of penciled you there as the being your
Yeah.
choice. And, so we try to give everybody their number one choice. There is a chance you might be on two, just depending on how.
Okay.
Your second one is maybe one that's not as busy or something like that. So we'll keep it in mind there best we can.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other comments or? Fire EMS update, anything?
I received a letter from Tim Sheehy and then nothing since. It says, thanks for the update and sorry for the belated response. I know that the road board is interested in determining what the budget for the new department would be and will be interested in the progress that you and Doug have made. Doug and I have talked about some of the numbers. We meet tomorrow, which was last Tuesday, not tomorrow. And I can see if I can get more specifics. I'm guessing we'll need a couple of folks from the road department to commit to work with you and whomever else from the city to set up a work meeting schedule and flesh out the details for a proposal. And he said, I'll be back in touch. And that's the last I heard, and that was on the 15th.
Basically, Susan and I sat down and figured out what we were spending on fire and EMS, just over the last 2 years, basically. What we spent last year and what we budgeted this year. And we were given that information to them so they kind of have an idea. And then they were working on calculating what their tax would be if they went to the taxing base, and how much money that meant for them to work with. And if it was gonna work, that's the first step. How much money they would get in tax base, and then looking at our fire and EMS budget, their fire budget, combining them and seeing if it'll even pencil out. So that's the first step. And then from there, I think we'll start breaking down more to get better numbers.
How many people are watching?
I don't know right now. 2.
I didn't see us on Facebook.
Well, we're,
On
you go to
YouTube.
Facebook, you have to click the link. Flushes you over to YouTube now.
Oh, it's on YouTube?
You have to click the link on our Facebook page. Flush you over to YouTube.
Or the city website.
Is the city's website got it now? It should.
Yes.
I think it was trying to.
Oh, I see it. Hold on. See if I can pull it up.
Anything you wanted to say on ordinances?
Ordinance?
Or, yeah, that's not the only one.
I have a couple of questions though on that.
Okay,
One of them is not come up and was telling about meetings and so on, what the council can do. This year, give the public period of comment. If the council goes with it, everybody votes for it. Will that? If the council votes to let the public speak at a work session or any other meeting, will that be illegal and work?
That's a formal decision by the council that then the mayor would have to, would have to honor a formal request.
I would love to see more.
Dick's question. I'm trying to guide you a little bit, Dick, honestly.
I know, I gotta make comments when I'm talking here. I didn't hear anything in meetings as far as 24 hours notice. What happens in an emergency, like we had the snowstorm, we had the flood back there? 24 hours could do an awful lot of damage. I think we should have something on black and white to have a meeting now, postpone for a day or two.
Unfortunately, unless you, the way state law says the minimum is 24 hours no matter what. And now, once we declare an emergency, so after you have your 24-hour special meeting, and in that meeting, he declares an emergency, then under the emergency guidelines, he can call meetings quicker based on an emergency. But only if we are in an emergency, state of emergency. So,
So in other words, my understanding,
now he can, what I mean is, so before council meetings, the mayor can declare a state of emergency.
Yeah, I understand.
And then the council has 24 hours to meet after declaring a state of emergency. But during that in between time, he can act in a state. And within 24 hours of declaring a state of emergency, council will meet and either honor that or they can revoke it. And then, so, but within that 24-hour period, he can still act if you're in that state of emergency.
I was just asking because there's some public, I know from '96 that they want to know answers now, and they say, well, we'll have a meeting in a day or so or something like that. And that, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't cut, because the people want to know now what's going to happen, not wait for a day or so. That's why I'm trying to get it.
Unfortunately, there has to be a 24-hour notice. Because maybe your group of people want to know, but you got to get that notice out to everybody, so everybody has the chance to know, not just those that are more informed than others. Does that make sense? You just have to, that's state law. I mean, we can't.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, that's why I asked the question. If you could have something in an ordinance or a resolution to an ordinance or whatever to change that to have a specification, call an emergency meeting.
Quickest we can have a meeting is in 24 hours.
And that's Oregon State.
That state statutes, I have to do 24 hours notice. Now, like I said, if there's an emergency, the mayor can declare an emergency. He can make those decisions without council decision. But that activates the council 24 hours to meet. And then at that time, they can either revoke that emergency or they can enact upon emergency and answer questions from the public.
So
I mean,
since the state of Oregon, aren't we still in an emergency?
Yes.
Aren't we still in
A health,
emergency?
public health. emergency.
Yes,
So under that, we could have a meeting. Or would it still have to be 24 hours?
still 24 hours.
still have to have the 24 hours for the special meeting. Is
The
there any?
emergency, the public health emergency just gives the mayor authority to act as under the guidance of a public health emergency, not all things, like some governors did in New York. No, that's not politics. But you can act in that scope of a public emergency.
Okay.
And where
Unless
you
you guys
get,
revoke it.
where you get into trouble, I think it partially answered Dick's question. My understanding of it is you declare a state of emergency and I can act, but I can act only minimally to impact the state of emergency. I cannot develop a plan and say, we're going to do this over the next day or two. That's out of the authority of the emergency. So your hands are tied on what you can do.
Plus, we also have to look at it because of the miscellaneous addition to the charter under section 50, whatever it is. If it's something that is going to affect law
money.
Ordinance.
water, sewer, or budgetary item that was not budgeted for, I have to give 30 days notice to this whole town.
And in the,
I think that what
in
I
the,
said flood of 96, I mean, a lot of people want to know what's going on, and that's why I was trying to get at, have a meeting, you know, started this morning, we're gonna have a meeting tonight.
can't do it.
Discuss the thing, because a lot of people were all kinds of stories floating around, all kinds of other stuff, but they wanted to know what's going on. You know, they wanted an update.
I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it's 24-hour notice. Pretty
Okay.
much.
Well, and right now under our charter, if we had something major where we had to have money and
We have to give a 30 days.
we would have to be 30 days before we could buy whatever it was to fix the major emergency in the city.
Because we have to have a public
Yeah,
hearing.
because we have to send out letters and we have to do 30 days notice. And so it could be a real mess.
That's part of the reason. When I first took office and we had the snowstorm. And we had these things facing us, there was no money in a budget to do anything with the snow.
I understand that.
And so that's why we formed a budget line. And we put a little money in there each year to build up some monies that are available to handle an emergency. At least we have identified in the budget now, some dollars that we can utilize in the event of an emergency. We just hope it's not any bigger than what the pot is that we've already got authorized.
I wasn't, sure. I understand all that and I know that part. I'm just trying to get at informing the public about some of this stuff. That's all. Trying to get the meeting.
Right.
Is there anybody on the Zoom or anything else that wants any comment?
There isn't any comment.
Okay. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:03.
Bye all.
Have a nice night.
Bye, everyone.
Or you should have a-
When you're on the